So the new one's prohibition, which is a great subject.
That would be the outlawing of drinking legally.
Yes, exactly. All alcoholic substances, except, by the way, and this was a, oh my God, nothing changes moment, that they could have medicinal substances that had a high alcohol content. And everybody was freaking getting phony prescriptions for alcohol-based medicine.
No kidding.
Nothing ever changes. The other...
That's hilarious.
There was all sorts of good stuff. But
they're rerunning it tonight on your check your local PBS station.
I mean, all sorts of interesting historical factoids, including the fact that in the early part, 1800s, early part of the 1800s, farmers would wake up in the morning and start the day with beer or cider. John Adams started every day with a glass of hard cider. It was part of the culture. We just drank all the time. But beer was about 2% alcohol, and the cider was similar. It was barely alcoholic, and it was really tough to get clean drinking water. So we were a drinking country, but another dope reference, distilled spirits kind of took off in the 1800s, and people went from drinking very, very weak beer, weak alcoholically speaking.
I like weak beer.
To
and they still do at most tailgate parties, as far as from what I witnessed.
To much, much, much stronger alcohol.
Fifth of Hennessy.
And similar libations. But many people didn't know it. You know, they probably figured it out as they were lying in the gutter with, vomit on their lips. But so that was a big problem. That's just kind of an interesting historical factoid. But to me, the real takeaway...
Were you drinking while you were watching Prohibition?
Yes, I was. And my 12-year-old daughter was next to me as they were describing husbands would come home from work and get highly inebriated until they were violent and angry and beat their children and raped their wives and pooed on the doorstep and everything. And I'd be like reaching for my glass of wine, and then I think, maybe I'll wait a minute. my kid is watching, thinking, he just took another sip. Soon there'll be the beatings and poopings. But of course there wasn't. It wasn't Friday night. So that excellent question. The level of alcoholism and the damage it was doing was astounding among the working classes, striking. But the takeaway for me, was kind of summarized by this woman, Frances Willard was her name. One of the great temperance leaders, also one of the great suffrage leaders, the right for women to vote.
Women voting.
Fascinating woman. Let's just get this out of the way. She didn't swing our way. She liked gals.
She's a lesbian.
But let's put that aside now.
Why wouldn't we?
No childish snickerings. She was a fascinating woman. She was into the temperance thing and suffrage thing. She was also into much better education, public education for kids. She was into raising the age of consent among little girls from 10.
Ooh.
Age 10.
Oof.
Speaking of glancing over at my beautiful little 12-year-old girl and thinking,
that's
holy
brutal.
crap.
In the United States of America.
Yes. To age 16. She wanted laws outlawing marital rape. And just social change, saying there shouldn't be marital rape. She was anti-child abuse, for worker protection. She was also into some stuff that you would have to call over-the-top socialism stuff. But she was a truly revolutionary mind in her time. She lived from 1839 to 1898. She was a modern person and woman. I mean, almost a century, well, certainly half a century before time, maybe 3/4 of a century before time. A true visionary in a way that, you don't see very often. I have enormous admiration for her as a thinker. But to track her and her career from very good intentions to deciding that it wasn't good enough to persuade, she had to compel people to live the way she wanted them to live, again, in ways that were way over the top, not just not having 10-year-olds being sexed up, but in, all sorts of other programs that I won't bog you down with. But so she made the transition from great intentions and persuasion to mandated lifestyles to she became famous and her people became famous for absolutely insisting, mandating these textbooks be in school that had horrifying, ridiculous, fairy tale fear-mongering for children alcohol.
Right.
You take one sip, it will burn the lining of your stomach, you will bleed to death. You take one sip, it'll chew away your stomach, turn you into a raving madman. You will chop up your parents with an axe the moment you take that first sip.
Wow.
So that transition from wonderful intention to mandating how people should live to being willing to engage in wholesale lying and deceit to make sure people live the way you think they should live it was so instructive.
Boy, that Ken Burns is a fascinating little man.
Oh, for an elf his size, his thoughts are powerful. You don't think a bearded little dwarf would be so persuasive.
So we're playing drunk Dean Martin music.
Drink to me only.
So, Prohibition's rerunning. I'm going to catch episode 1 tonight.
Yeah, really enjoyable.
On PBS. You are listening to the Armstrong and Getty Show.
I will drink to you.
On a beer? 7 o'clock in the morning. Scotch?
That was the early 20th century, which led to Prohibition, that sort of attitude. The new mini-series from the clever little Ken Burns, which is running on your local PBS station. I didn't see episode 1. I'm looking forward to watching the whole thing, though.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, the context is so important. The context of the issues, the historical context, the social movements, the immigrant v. Native American custom battle, Protestants versus Catholics. It's very interesting.
It's amazing that we outlawed booze, and for so long. How long was it? 12 years?
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Oh, yeah, it's incredible. And they make the point that its main effect is that it made millions of law-abiding citizens criminals. It was completely unenforceable, and it made criminals incredibly rich.
Well, in Boardwalk Empire, the movie about the Prohibition era, I mean, its first episode last year was this big Atlantic City casino where they were all partying, and they stop the clock. Hey, it's almost midnight, and they do the big countdown to when Prohibition starts. Woohoo! Booze is illegal, and they're pouring champagne, and all the politicians are there, the senator and everybody, and the police chief, and everybody's there drinking, and it's so funny that they're all boozing it up when Prohibition is officially.
Yeah.
And it started that way. It didn't just become that way. It's amazing.
A couple more interesting historical factoids. A lot of our lingo as Americans comes from Prohibition. For instance, at first the temperance movement was, look, just keep it cool. Don't get hammered. Don't get so drunk you can't, raise your family and treat your wife decently. But then the total abstinence movement started, and it always had a big T for total abstinence. They're teetotalers. That's where that comes from.
I always thought teetotaling was TEA.
Yeah.
You drank tea as opposed to booze.
No, that comes from that. And the other thing was that when Prohibition started, there'd be guys who'd just walk around the city with flasks, and they'd sell you a drink for a couple of bucks, and they kept it in their pants. They're bootleggers.
Oh.
Isn't that funny?
Sure.
Yeah, so there you go. Fox facts. Anyway, the other interesting thing about this Frances Willard, who we were just talking about, who is an absolute visionary woman, leader of temperance, a leader of women's suffrage.
Somebody texted she was a know-it-all nosy bitch.
Well, yes, she was that too. One of her main strategies was convincing white women all over the country that big, brutish, drunken black men would rape them if they didn't pass Prohibition too. So, but again, the whole, I have good intentions, therefore I will tell you how to live. Progressing from, from that to, I have good intentions, so I'll force you to live that way, to, I have good intentions, so I'll force you to live that way, and I will completely twist the truth because my goal is so noble, it doesn't matter as long as I'm successful at becoming literally oppression. It was interesting. But the one thing we learned from history is that we learn nothing from history, so never mind. Forget I brought it up.
How many hours long is this thing, this TV show?
I think it's 3 2-hour episodes, which is restrained by Ken Burns standards, really. Mary in Fair Oaks. Hi, Mary.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good. What's up?
Well, my favorite lingo that came from it is obviously Skid Row, which is the street in Seattle where they have all the bars that used to be where the lumber was skidded down the road.
Yeah, Skid Road in Seattle.
I had no
That's right.
idea.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
and all the loggers would go there, and after they're done skidding their logs, they get all hammered and lay around in their own filth.
I've laid around in my own filth in Seattle.
So anyway, Mary, you were saying?
Well, I was going to tell you, my middle school education of Prohibition was pretty much just Carrie Nation with her hatchet, and that was about it. It was just women who wanted it to be better. Last night was really enlightening that they really just wanted the saloons to be eradicated, because that's where mostly the immigrant population would meet, and they would be schooled on English. They would they would pick up their mail, cash their checks, learn how to vote and who to vote for, and they would. So I think that's more importantly is that they were trying to frame people's political views more than they were trying to just get rid of alcohol.
That was a factor too, but it was mostly about alcohol, I think.
Yeah, but I think that part of it was that they were trying to protect. That some of it was the progressive movement of protecting.
That happens. Yeah, that happens all the time. And it drives me crazy. People do that all the time.
But I think I think it seems more like they were social engineering. They were trying to eliminate these people collectively getting together and being educated in voting a certain way.
Absolutely a factor. Yep, very few things are just one thing, Mary, and well said. Thank you.
Parts 2 and 3 are on tonight. If you missed part 1, you're just screwed.
No, I doubt it.
Prohibition, absolutely terrific, says the San Francisco Chronicle. Intoxicating, says the San Antonio Express.
Hilarious.
A remarkable tale, says the Vancouver Sun. I will check that out.
It is unthinkable that Prohibition passed.
She learned more about it in school than I did. Never learned a word about it in school.
And this was not accidental, because I've thought about this, I've read about this, and I know Ken Burns has too.
Clever little man.
There are certain people. Oh, this comes right from Thomas Sowell's great book, Clash of Visions. Did I finally get it right?
I think it's a conflict of visions, as opposed to a clash of civilizations, which is a different.
I never get the name of that book right. It's right on my bookshelf. Anyway, whatever the hell it's called, talks about some people believe humanity can be perfected. And other people believe if you try to impose perfection on humanity, they'll just say F you, and they'll keep living their life, and you'll make them into lawbreakers. And that was kind of the point of view that he took, and it reminded me of Sowell that a lot of the prohibition, the temperance movement people believe that you could make a world of sobriety and studiousness and good behavior. If you could just make people behave that way, people would all be good.